listening to The Charity Show, the podcast for charity insiders by charity insiders. If you enjoy the show, please take a second to rate, follow and subscribe on your usual podcast platform. And here's what's coming up in episode 29. Legacy gifts are a really, really important source of income for a lot of charities. And also, weirdly, one of those things you market now, but don't see the rewards for a very, very long time into the future.
It's been an incredibly exciting chapter for CoppaFeel. Being a breast cancer awareness charity for young people, our tone of voice is really fun and upbeat and quite cheeky, really. And that doesn't really go hand in hand with traditional expectations around legacy giving and end-of-life planning. So when we approached legacy giving as an income stream, I wanted to make sure that we could talk about it really authentically and impactfully, while not alienating our core 18 to 24-year-old awareness audience as well.
The fundraising regulator, with support from the Information Commissioner's Office, the ICO, has encouraged charities to prepare for the new soft opt-in marketing rules that are going to be introduced. When the new laws are implemented in the coming months, charities are going to be allowed to send electronic comms to a person without their consent if certain conditions are met.
I'm a bit of a sucker for zombies, so on my list at the top, I don't know who's going to come with me because no one else in the house likes it. It's going to be the 28 years later. I binged the day 28 days and 28 weeks later the other night until ridiculous o'clock in the morning and had horrible fevered zombie dreams as well. But great film, so I'm looking forward to watching that and seeing how they've developed that storyline. Welcome back to The Charity Show. I'm Piers Townley.
And I'm Tim Bainan. And Piers, it's been a scorcher this week. We're recording this at the end of what's been a pretty hot week. How have you been coping? Are you good in the heat?
I am actually quite good. I do like it. But then I do get to the stage where I'm not going to moan about it, And then we had a Zoom call with a colleague. I was working from home. Zoom call with a colleague at the charity. And she's wearing the Brain Tumor charity hoodie. So what are you doing? It's just the aircon there. It's freezing cold. So we can't you can't really do it. But you were torturing me early on, Tim, because when we recorded our last episode of the charity show, you made me turn the fan off in the background because you were picking it up on the mic. Yeah. I think we had about 12 minutes before it became almost unbearable. I could just see on screen melting.
Oh God, we were doing an interview, weren't we? And honestly, I was standing up doing this interview, and by the time we finished, honestly, the shirt I was wearing, it was like I'd just run 10 miles. It was disgusting. Absolutely disgusting.
To be fair, our guests were the same as well. All four of us were kind of feeling each other's pain. It was like, let's talk a little bit quickly so we can get it done.
Dear, this country in the heat is terrible, isn't it? Don't sleep well either when it's hot. Not good. So feeling a bit exhausted at the moment. There you go.
How very British.
We wouldn't be British if we didn't moan about it. And this week, we're going to be talking... as well as talk about the weather, we're going to talk about the power of charity films to support legacy gifts. We haven't talked much about legacies on the show in recent months, so it's really good to get into this. And we've got Zsuzi Kiss from CoppaFeel and Emma Bracegirdle from the creative agency, the Saltways. And they're going to be talking about it from a marketing perspective. And telling us about all that they've done to create this amazing new film to support CoppaFeel's legacies ambitions. It's a funny one. And when you think about it from a marketing perspective, I've always thought of legacies as being a bit of a tough sell. Obviously, the charities I've worked for in the past, we've done legacy campaigns, and sometimes they can feel a little bit cliche because you're targeting a certain audience of a certain age and asking them to leave gifts in their will. It's a tough sell, I think. But increasingly, I think it's a really important thing for charities to consider. Legacy gifts are a really, really important source of income for a lot of charities. And also, weirdly, one of those things you market now, but don't see the rewards for a very, very long time into the future. So it's a strange one from a marketing perspective. But what are your thoughts of legacy gifts in general? Does it touch your life at all?
It does actually, Tim. Well, it touches us personally. Obviously, you've got your own wills, you've got you start getting a bit older and stuff. But our Gifts in Wills campaigns that we do at the Brain Tumor charity is often a very, very emotive time to get a campaign doing. The team, not my team, but the team that put it together and put the wish list together, obviously the comms team and sometimes the PR media team get the stories and reach out and get our supporter stories. It's often involving families, isn't it? It's often involving children. If you've got it's a health charity, it's a brain tumor charity that I work for. So the stories can be very emotive, and it's kind of getting that balance. But we do have some incredible supporters. We have had some incredible campaigns and some films made with their support as well. But yeah, it's a difficult one to approach. And as you say, it's seeing so far into the future a lot of the time that sometimes they're kind of maybe not given the center and front attention in part of the major giving or major donor or the fundraising team, whichever that lies on in that charity, that it needs to be.
Yeah. Do you as a charity as well, obviously you're a health related charity and have supported people who've been diagnosed with brain tumours, do you offer support to them in terms of advice, in terms of will making and what they should do if they're facing a health diagnosis like that?
Yeah, we do. It's part of the suite of the support services that are available to people that we do support. And, the Gifts in Wills campaign, the Free Will service that we run, along, lots of other charities do it as well. It is kind of core to the kind of raft of services that we kind of do, all sorts of, welfare and, mental health support and, alongside all the other things that we offer. So, yeah, it is integral to that.
It is. I think it's fascinating subjects in general in terms of who you market to when it comes to gifts as well, because I remember at the charities I've worked for in the past, we've had those conversations before in terms of marketing to people who are at those moments in their life where they think about making a will. And it's not just people of a certain age who are maybe well into retirement and need to think about their wills. It's about people who, trying to perhaps communicate to people who are at that moments when they do make a will. Maybe they've just had children or they've just got married. So thinking about legacy campaigns in a slightly different way, I think is a really interesting thing and something we can dig into more in the months ahead.
That's one of the elements that we do as well. Obviously, the brain tumour, the diagnosis, the prognosis doesn't always mean it's as the normal demographics that you would target a Gifts in Will campaign to. Often a lot younger, often circumstances are a lot more extreme than that. So all these things are considered, I think, when we're putting the storytelling and when we put the campaigns and the asks out together for those sort of things.
Yeah, absolutely. And today we obviously the lovely duo we get back to listen to telling us all about the amazing film that they've made. And talking of films, it's a summer of blockbuster movies ahead, Piers. We were just talking about it before we started. Hit the record button. What's top of your list, your to see list this summer?
I'm a bit of a sucker for zombies, so on my list at the top, I don't know who's going to come with me because no one else in the house likes it. It's going to be the 28 Years Later. I binged the 28 days and 28 weeks later the other night until ridiculous o'clock in the morning and had horrible fevered zombie dreams as well. But great film. So I'm looking forward to watching that and seeing how they've developed that storyline.
Yeah, Danny Boyle. He's a great director.
Danny Boyle.
It would be brilliant.
Yeah. And going back to 28 Days Later, which I think is probably, 15, 20 years old.
Yeah, it's great.
Cillian Murphy looks so young, but he still stands up. It's kind of almost a bit of a game changer in the way zombies were portrayed. I mean, these things leg it, which is just absolutely terrifying in itself. But yeah, Danny Boyle's use of cinematography and lighting and it's just great stuff.
I remember when that first came out and all the stuff about how they had to shut down London and they filmed it in the summer, but at like 4 o'clock in the morning when there was no one around. And it's incredible when you see those shots of London and he's just walking around and there's nobody and nothing around. Amazing.
Very good. So that's mine. And also I'm kind of halfway through because we keep getting interrupted with stuff with Conclave. Really enjoying that, actually. Didn't think I would, but yeah, it grabbed us from the start. So I'm enjoying that on the streaming service. But next trip to the cinema is a Zombie Fest. What about you, Tim?
Well, big F1 fans in our house. So we're going to go and see this weekend, I think. We might go and see the new F1 movie with Brad Pitt, see how Hollywood treats F1. I'm slightly anxious because I've followed Formula One all my life, and my son's into it as well. If it's too cheesy Hollywood, it might just be a bit cringe. So we'll see how it goes. I will report back in the next show. And then also, I am a bit of a Jurassic Park fan as well, so I might have to go and see the new. Love dinosaurs on the big screen. Not quite the same on the telly. You've got to see them on the big screen. So Jurassic World, I think.
I agree.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cars, zombies, and dinosaurs. What a great triumvirate.
Brilliant. Love it. This week's interview is all about legacy giving, but not as you might know it. Because let's be honest, legacy campaigns can sometimes feel a little bit cliched, but what if they didn't have to be? We're joined this week by Zsuzi Kiss from CoppaFeel and Emma Bracegirdle from the Saltways to talk about Sue's story, the charity's latest legacy campaign that blends a real-life story with heart and humanity in a way that's genuinely fresh. It's based on a real person, Sue, and it's already sparked a 300% increase in legacy pledges for CoppaFeel. So, in short, we dig into how the campaign and the film came about, how they stuck the tone just right, and what other charities could take away if they want to shake up their own legacy messaging. The interview, as usual, is in two parts with a bit of charity news in the middle. Here's part one: why legacy giving and why now? Emma and Zsuzi, welcome to the charity show. It's fantastic to see you both and to talk to you today about the exciting work that you guys have been doing and collaborating on together. I want to dig into that a little bit as we go through. But let's sort of get back to basics first of all. And Zsuzi, perhaps first of all, you could tell us a little bit about you and your role at CoppaFeel, and then maybe just a little bit about legacy marketing and how that sort of fits into your overall sort of marketing mix.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having us today. So my name is Zsuzi. I'm the individual giving manager here at CoppaFeel. And what that means for us is that I look after our wonderful individual donors, our community fundraisers, and then recently our legacy donors as well. And I say recently because legacy giving is actually a relatively new income stream for us at CoppaFeel. So although we've really gratefully received legacy donations in the past, it's only in the past couple of years that we've proactively sought this kind of support. And that's mostly down to the fact that we haven't really had the time or the resource to focus on this income stream. You know, CoppaFeel started 15 years ago, so we're still a relatively new charity. And with legacy giving being something that you definitely have to invest in the long term, it wasn't something we were initially able to concentrate on. But now that we're doing it, it's been an incredibly exciting chapter for CoppaFeel. In terms of kind of where we started with this project, being a breast cancer awareness charity for young people, our tone of voice is really fun and upbeat and quite cheeky, really. If you've come across CoppaFeel, you've likely seen us wearing giant boob costumes, dancing around in your local shopping centres covered in glitter. And that doesn't really go hand in hand with traditional expectations around legacy giving and end-of-life planning. So when we approached legacy giving as an income stream, we wanted to be really mindful of how we spoke about it, and I wanted to make sure that we could talk about it really authentically and impactfully while not alienating our core 18 to 24-year-old awareness audience as well. Which is why we were so grateful to have the help of Emma and her brilliant team to come up with our legacy film, because it's kind of completely kickstarted this income stream for us.
And Zsuzi, was it quite daunting then to go down that legacy route? You say, the CoppaFeel's been there for 15 years, so it is really new for you to branch out into this area of fundraising. Was that really daunting, or did you have lots of ideas of how you wanted to integrate it into your wider fundraising strategy? Did you, borrow from other charities or whatever? Or
So I think the answer to that is yes and no. I think I would lie if I said that starting the conversation around legacy giving was a little bit intimidating, just because of the kind of preconceptions and the stereotypes that people tend to have around legacy giving. That being said, our wonderful founder, Chris Halenga, approached legacies and end-of-life planning in the most beautiful, life-affirming way. So I don't know if you would have come across it, but she held a living funeral.
Dawn French attended, didn't she?
Yes,
She did her Vicar
exactly.
Diddley, didn't she?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, exactly. So Dawn French was there. We received the invite to that in a cardboard coffin, along with a test tube of tequila, with the express instructions to come dressed in our most extravagant outfits. So alongside Dawn French, we had people in cow costumes, head-to-toe glitter, sequins, wedding dresses. So the whole event was held in Truro Cathedral, and it was honestly the most beautiful celebration of life. And I think I can speak for most people there when I say that it really made us consider all the positives of starting these conversations and getting comfortable with our own mortality. And actually, it made us realize that although, yes, talking about end-of-life giving can be scary, it can also be a hugely empowering conversation. Telling your loved ones about how you want that stage of your life to look like, and making sure that they know how to celebrate your life and how to look after you, can give both you and your loved ones a real sense of comfort. So it's not just something that, is a powerful kind of conversation to have with our donors, but it's really something that can give value to their entire family. And so, yes, it can be scary, but it can also be so worth it. And that's kind of the mindset that we went into this with as well.
So Chris's legacy then, for the building and the establishment of your legacy part of the charity was solidified, really, I suppose, from that Truro celebration.
Absolutely. And even before. So Chris liked to talk about this thing she called Deathman, which is basically making sure that all of your wishes were accounted for, and that you had thought about it, and that you were having these conversations at a time when it wasn't sort of too late to talk about. And so it's something that we have been thinking about for quite a few years, but definitely with us having a bit more time and resource to put towards legacy giving, and then also having Chris's incredible legacy as well to kind of consider, was a really powerful way to start that chapter for us.
Amazing stuff. And Emma, from your perspective, I mean, Zsuzi's talked brilliantly there about some of the inspiration and the desire to reach that younger audience with a legacy message. From your perspective, actually, first of all, before you go into that, could you give us a little bit of an overview of the Saltways as well? That'd be interesting to know, to let our audiences know exactly who you're talking about, who you're working with. But then also, what was your perspective on the brief that came from CoppaFeel, and bearing in mind all that Zsuzi just talked through in terms of the organisation's desire to reach that younger audience with a slightly different kind of a message? How did you approach that creatively?
Yeah, well, I guess firstly, thank you for having us. It's lovely to be here. I'm the founder of the Saltways. We make ethical and effective films for the third sector. I'd say it's 99% charity. So my background is actually working in charities. So I've worked in fundraising and comms. And 5 years ago was working in a charity, making content on my phone, and thought, I could probably be, actually get a production company in to do this, and we could do it professionally, and just felt like I couldn't find the right fit. So decided to make a film with my brother, who's a documentary maker, and it was a great success, and we loved it. And something clicked in the universe, and thought, I think we could be helping more charities do this. So and now we do lots of films, animations. We also do free training for charities, teach them how to create content using phones. And we always like to give back to the sector as well, and which is why we actually made this film for free for CoppaFeel. And we did it as we did a shout out on social media and through our channels of asking charities to apply for legacy giving, a free legacy for giving film, because we saw there was this great need in the sector, that the big charities had kind of nailed it. And it was more the sort of medium and small ones that it's this whole new part of giving, and they're kind of expected to just know what to do with that. And I think there's some uncertainty around, well, how do we approach this sensitively? How do we even have this conversation? And how do we create content to accompany that? So what we wanted to do was work with a charity that was a bit different, and you wouldn't think of necessarily with legacy giving, to really be able to share those learnings with the sector. Which is why it's great to be here today to be able to do that. And the CoppaFeel was it just worked because they're such a lovely charity who definitely you wouldn't imagine naturally, that's a charity that you'd leave a gift in a will to. So I think creatively we had lots of discussions, didn't we, Zsuzi, at the start around, well, what do we want to do here? And I think what we always encourage charities to do is that research bit, which is so important. So we had a lot of internal conversations with Zsuzi and her team around, what's the tone of voice, what's worked for you before, what hasn't worked, where does this fit within, the rest of your work? And then the key bit, I think, was we had a bit of an aha moment where we thought about, well, actually, if we want legacy giving to be successful for you, we actually need to be targeting an older demographic here. So we need to be thinking about people who are connected to your charity who care about it, that actually are more sort of the 50 plus age rather than the younger demographic that you actually do your awareness raising with. And so you kind of had, maybe that was a bit of a barrier, but you definitely found supporters of that age range. And we spoke to, I think, 5 maybe, and asked them around, if you were going to leave a gift and a will to this charity, like what would motivate you to do that? And it was very much led by those conversations we'd had, and that then became the basis of the film, that they wanted it to be focused on impact and kind of strong messaging around it could save a young person's life, and that was what the feedback that we had. And we also showed them examples of legacy films that we'd seen in the sector and what they liked about them, what they didn't like about them. And as much as we love the kind of more cool conceptual stuff, actually when we showed that to a few of them, they kind of just didn't really understand what was going on. And so we just kind of like to know what would happen to the money. So that's why we definitely went with more of a story-based film that really reflected what the older demographic of supporters to CoppaFeel felt like would resonate with them. And I think it's trying to, within legacy content, is trying to address those barriers and drivers to giving to your organisation of a legacy, of a gift and a will, and try and address those within the content of the film.
That's really interesting you say that, because as I was watching it, I was like, oh where's Leanne? Why isn't Leanne in there? And then obviously you get to the end of the film and you're like, there we go. That's that story then comes full circle. But was that a conscious decision not to feature Leanne to camera rather than just be talking about her story and then towards the end, Emma?
Yeah, I mean, it's a mixture of things. Firstly, we wanted it to be about Sue, and that was a decision that they made as a family, Sue and Leanne, is that Leanne had said to Sue, no, Mum, this is your story. And we wanted that to be, we wanted the focus of the film to be the gift and the will, not about their story too much. So we still wanted the audience to go away and think about, well, this is why she left a gift and is leaving a gift in her will to the charity. But actually, Zsuzi, you can probably explain this, but it showed how we did co-create this with Sue as well and Leanne, and they kind of gave a bit of feedback at the end that changed that, didn't they, Zsuzi?
Yeah, so Sue and her whole family were a really active part of the whole process, from sort of the very beginning, figuring out exactly what we're going to film and down to the location and the sorts of questions we're going to cover, all the way until the very end. So both Sue and Leanne and their entire family got to kind of feed into the different versions of the film. And actually it was Leanne who, once she watched the film, kind of turned around and went, "It looks like I've died. And I most certainly haven't, because I found my cancer early. I am now living cancer-free, and that is the whole point. That is why CoppaFeel exists, so that more young people facing a breast cancer diagnosis get that diagnosis early, so that they can have a beautiful, long life after cancer." And so that little bit at the end wouldn't have happened had we not co-created the film with Leanne. And actually, I think that those two sentences at the end, which essentially say Leanne is now living cancer-free thanks to early detection, that those two lines make the film so much stronger. And it really emphasizes a point that we feel so strongly about at CoppaFeel, which is the importance of ethical storytelling. So when we work with storytellers, whether that's for a film like this or directly with our awareness messaging, we always want to make sure that we're looking after our storytellers. Without them, our awareness message wouldn't come to life. We wouldn't be able to showcase the importance of our work. So it's incredibly important that we look after them and make sure that they're supported throughout the entire process, from before we even start asking questions and filming all the way until the very end. So, for example, with Sue, I sent her a whole resource pack filled with exercises and resources that she can do after we filmed her story to be able to process the day. You know, with legacy giving being quite a hard topic to talk about, it's unavoidable that some difficult emotions are going to come up. And so we want to make sure that we're ready to support our storytellers through that rather than it being an afterthought. It's the same reason why all of our storytellers have access to therapy and workshops that they can attend if they want to, so that they really feel like we're not capitalizing on their story, but we're really, really looking after them and making sure that they have a positive experience. And so this experience with Leanne and the key role that she played in the success of the film really goes to show that bit of ethical kind of storytelling isn't just worth it for the people telling their stories, but it makes for stronger, more authentic, more powerful stories as well.
But that's a really like I said, it's a really powerful thing to treasure your storytellers. The storytelling is key to any charity, any cause, but the storytellers and their own lived experiences is what makes that so powerful. Really, really like that idea of that supporter pack. Because the filming, as you say, if you put a camera in front of most people's faces, it's very, very daunting, let alone, going through a journey, especially with such a powerful film that the CoppaFeel have got. So that it requires a lot. It's asking a lot, isn't it, of your supporters? I
was going to ask Emma actually just exactly on that, and with that in mind, and what Zsuzi's been saying about that approach to making sure that the person at the centre of the story is supported all the way through. Tell us about how you actually approached that filming day. That when you take a camera and lights and a crew and whatever else, into someone's house, sit them down, stick this lens in their face, and then you ask them to tell them a very deep and personal and raw and emotional story. How do you approach that in terms of putting that person at ease, making sure that you get what you want out of that interview?
Yeah, I mean, it starts right at the beginning. I mean, we co-create even if it's just a tiny, from a tiny scale to full co-creation projects on all of our films where there's contributors. So it began when we first with the conversations, the research questions, and that's when we start building a relationship with Sue. And it's always, at the end of those conversations, we might say, we are going to make a film. Would you be up for being involved in that? And then that leads to further conversations where Sue actually helped shape the content. So it's, this is what we're thinking. Where would you like to be filmed? Where do you feel comfortable? Where do you think that you'd be where do you think your story would best come to life? So it was her decision to film at her home. It was her decision to go for a walk in the woods. It was her decision to what time of the day it was going to be, because she had to do a school run. So it was very much led by her. And then she got to meet the producer as well. So the person who was going to, and I think we gave her the option to meet the videographer, but I'm not sure she did. Oh, it was the same person, wasn't it? It was Yulia who filmed and produced. So she had the opportunity to meet Yulia as well online. So it's already building that trust and that relationship. And I think there's other things as well, like making sure that you get people's fully informed consent, making sure they know that they can withdraw it at any time, and you check in at various points even before you get to filming of, is everything still okay? Is there anything you're worried about? Anything you want us to go through? She had a really good idea of what it is that we're going to be asking her, because she'd already helped shape that content and the key messages. And then we also make sure that on the day that, we make sure that she has the opportunity to have regular breaks, and that she can also have those opportunities to withdraw consent as well at any time, which is a risk. But I think when you bring people in for the full journey, they really fully understand what's going to be happening. So it's rare that they do withdraw their consent later down the line. And then the practical stuff is just, you get there at the shoot, and it's not just get the camera out, let's go. It's let's have a cup of tea first. Let's have a chat. Ask her, like, where are you comfortable? Where do you want us to film? And then when you set up the camera, it's very much just look at me, don't look at the camera, and we're just having a chat. And we always give a lot of time for our shoots. So it's not, half an hour and we're going to bash through some questions. It's more, we're having a conversation. We use the questions that we've written as a guide. So we do need to make sure that there are key messages covered, but we use them as a guide in that we'll have the conversation, then we go back and look at the questions and think, oh, we've got everything covered here. Have we made sure we've answered that? And maybe we need to go back and talk about that. And it's giving people space and asking very open-ended questions as well that will help people relax. So things like, could you take me back to that time? If I was a fly on the wall, what would I have seen? And then just things at the end, just always asking, is there anything else you'd like to say? Or is anything you said today that actually you wish you hadn't have said? Because we can make sure that's not in there. And it's, I think time and space are the two really key things in making sure people feel really relaxed and comfortable, whilst you're still making sure you get the stuff that you need to make a good film. And then even after, it's following up and making sure they're okay and make sure they know that they'll watch the edit before it goes anywhere, so that that takes the pressure of them thinking, oh, it's just going to go out and I don't know when or where. So I think it's just treating people like humans and just as if this could be your mum that you're having a chat with. It's not. I'm not trying to get. It's you're achieving a goal together. You're co-creating something, and they're along for the creative process. So we always start with, instead of saying, "Can we come and film you?" It's we're making a legacy fundraising film so that CoppaFeel can do more of their amazing work. Can you help us with that? So it's even like how you frame the question, the ask to even go and film with them.
Yeah, I think it's. I think you've been quite modest there on the interview front there, because I think a good interview is as much down to the interviewer as it is to the interviewee. You've really got to listen to what's being said to you, and you've also got to allow for silence at times. And I think when I've spoken to service users, beneficiaries, and people who've been impacted by the charities I've worked for, that can feel awkward at times for the interviewer, because you can see that they've got a lump in their throat. They need some time. You don't want to hurry them. They want to get this across, but that's a real skill in order to be able to allow that person time to get across what they want to get across. So I don't think everyone could do that. So I think, a good interviewer is as important as a good interviewee, I think.
Yeah. I think as we find the best producers we have are people who just actually really give a shit. Sorry for swearing, but that's like the biggest thing for us. It's like, and it comes across really, so there has to be some curiosity and some intrigue of this person's story and their experiences, because then it will feel like a conversation. There has to be, you can't just say it when someone said open up about something, just go, okay, great, next question. It needs to, you need to actually care about what they're saying and acknowledge what they're saying, which is why all of our team go through trauma-informed practice training, and it's that's really important to us, because you do just get better content because you're basically just giving them a forum for them to share their story in a safe space.
And I think even if you do have a list of questions, you've got to be prepared to throw that away if it comes to it, depending on where the conversation's going, and just listen to what the person's telling you and see what they want to talk about. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
and equally, if you feel like there's something they're not comfortable speaking about and that's putting them on edge, just lay off it. Don't push something that. And there's a difference between getting emotional and getting uncomfortable in situations, and I think it's knowing the difference between those two as well.
Yeah, definitely.
That really resonates, Emma, what you're saying about that as well. It's kind of an understanding that for most people, for 99% of people, putting them in that situation where you are going to film them or interview them is really daunting on a very surface level, let alone, Zsuzi, as your supporters and your storytellers, they have a very deep personal, often very emotional connection to the charity as well. So it's putting all of that understanding before you even press play or press record on anything, isn't there? Zsuzi, would you say that's kind of how you work as a charity, how you wrap around that care for your supporters?
Absolutely. I mean, we like to think of these storytelling experiences and films as just a conversation. It's as simple as having a conversation and really listening. So I had the privilege of actually going along and being there for the shoot. And it was beautiful to watch Sue tell her story, but also see Yulia really look after Sue and make sure that she was asking questions in a really empathetic and kind way. And I guess something that was really important to us at CoppaFeel is that Sue really felt like she had people to go to if she needed a moment, or if she wasn't sure about something, if she had questions, or if she, as Emma said, wanted to not have something she said be included. And so throughout that entire process, I kept really checking in with her the day of the shoot, the day after the shoot. She was probably honestly sick of me checking in with her and telling her that I'm her biggest cheerleader and she can tell me whatever she wanted. But at least she definitely knew that there was someone there whose entire job that day was just to champion her. I didn't care what she said. I didn't care what the film looked. I mean, obviously I cared. I cared about the end product, but on that day, my number one priority was to make sure that Sue was really, really well looked after. And that goes back to what Emma was saying. If your storyteller knows that you're there solely to support them and to look after them, and that their well-being is your number one priority, they are going to feel much more comfortable sharing their story and going through those difficult emotions, because they'll know that they have someone there to support them through that. So I know sometimes we talk about creating safe spaces, and I think that's a little bit of an impossible task to achieve. You can create safer spaces, but you can't go into someone's home and attempt to make that seem normal, because it isn't. And it's about that recognition piece, that you are asking people to go that extra mile and kind of recognizing the huge impact that can have. I mean, this film has completely skyrocketed our legacy giving, and reassuring Sue that all of the hard work that she is doing, because it is work what she is doing, telling her story, is going to have that impact, is also really going to help in that process, I think.
Such an interesting conversation. It's amazing to hear what impact the film has had for CoppaFeel. Just such a powerful piece of film there. Now, though, it's time for a bit of third sector news. So what have you spotted this week, Tim?
Okay, this is at risk of getting a bit technical and a little bit boring, but I think it's an important thing nevertheless. And it's probably something that comms and marketing people will or should be aware of, or if not aware of already, then they will be in the not too distant future. Essentially, the fundraising regulator, with support from the Information Commissioner's Office, the ICO, has encouraged charities to prepare for the new soft opt-in marketing rules that are going to be introduced. This is all about changes to direct marketing rules and the new law that received royal assent last month as part of the Data Use and Access Act. When the new laws are implemented in the coming months, charities are going to be allowed to send electronic comms to a person without their consent if certain conditions are met. So this is where it starts to get really complicated, because at the moment, you have to have an opt-in from a person in order to be able to send them electronic communications, email, and so on. Without an opt-in, you can't send them stuff. The soft opt-in rule changes that, but only if certain conditions are met. So it's very complex, and I really do advise anyone listening to this who wants to know more to go to the fundraising regulator website or the ICO website and to look for that information on there. We'll put some links in the show notes to help you out as well. But the Data and Marketing Association has estimated that the soft opt-in changes could increase annual donations by a massive £290 million, while both the ICO and the fundraising regulator have previously urged charities to be cautious. Now, though, the fundraising regulator has urged charities to plan for the upcoming changes in its new guidance. And as I've mentioned, we'll put a link to that new guidance in the show notes. In short, and this is where it starts to get complicated, so don't worry if you tune out. As I say, read the information. Charities must provide people with an opportunity to opt out at the time that their personal data is first collected. It advised also that the changes will not apply to telephone marketing and will rely on the legitimate interest lawful basis for processing personal data under UK GDPR rules. So I told you it gets complicated. But it's really, really important because essentially this means that it's slightly easier to communicate with people without necessarily having their opted in consent. So this soft opt-in rule change is coming. Really important to see whether or not it affects or you could benefit from it. So check out the guidance, follow the links in our show notes, and make sure you gen up on what you need to. So that's the thing that jumped out at me most this week, Piers. What about you?
I think, yes, slightly complicated there, but as you say, Tim, lots of links in our show notes, but it's something that will no doubt become very, very important to a lot of charities very, very quickly. Well, I've jumped on a report that's just been released, and this is part of a wider discussion that we've seen in the media and across the country in various organisations as well. It's the 4-day week. Now, recently, all 8 charities and other not-for-profit organisations that took part in a recent 4-day working week national pilot have opted to continue offering reduced hours to their employees. So we've seen various media uproars and celebrations of this trial happening in various other industries as well. So over in the third sector, this has also been going on. The 4-Day Week Foundation and Boston College have published the findings of their 6-month national pilot of the 4-day working week. This began back in November. And of the 17 organisations that took part, with over 950 employees between them, 8 operate within the charity, not-for-profit, NGO or voluntary sectors. Most of the participating organisations, that's 12 of them, 12 of the 17, they trialled a 4-day week, while the remainder opted for a 9-day fortnight with no loss of pay for the workers. And all 17 organisations, including all those charitable ones, have confirmed that they will continue with the 4-day week or the 9-day fortnight after the trial, with 3 already making this change permanent. So massive changes to the way they operate there. And one example is from environmental entrepreneurship charity Bioregionals. They've got 29 staff. They all took part in a trial of a 9-day fortnight. And their chief executive and co-founder, Sue Riddleston, told Civil Society that her organisation was, quote, so delighted and pleasantly surprised with how its trial went that it decided to extend it for another 6 months. She goes on to be quoted as, during the initial trial, our revenue broadly stayed the same, and there were statistically significant improvements in staff well-being and job satisfaction, she said. So tangible results to something that is quite fundamentally a change to the way we all work. So one of the things that did strike me, though, Tim, was that maybe these organisations were small in size rather than the larger organisations, which can be a bit oil tankerish in terms of being able to change and pivot. So maybe that was down to them being a bit smaller. But saying that, it also brought back a memory of during the lockdown and the fallout from all the COVID over at the brain tumour charity, our SLT at the time and our CEO at the time, Sarah Lindsell. She gifted the entire charity, obviously with some caveats for our support services and individual workings within teams, but she gifted the entire brain tumour charity with a 4-day week during August. And it was part in response to the various pressures and stresses of, many of our staff with young children, many of us working remotely, all the kind of stresses of working with COVID. And we trialled that. We had a 4-day August way back a few years back. So it kind of just brought up that memory of how that kind of worked. And it'll be interesting to see if this kind of 4-day week and this kind of program of trials, gets rolled out further.
I think that's great. I would be well up for a 4-day week. I think the crucial thing is whether or not there's any decrease in productivity or income or the engagement levels and all that kind of stuff. All your usual measures of success. If they continue at the level that they are and you're working a 4-day week, why would you change? Why would you go back? Your staff are still doing what you're paying them to do.
Well, exactly. And as that quote says, that, they didn't see any drop in income and noted a significant uptick in well-being of the staff. I suppose the other caveat there is then it needs to be democratic for everyone, doesn't it? I suppose we had this as well. It's like, well, the support services, if you have those as a charity, are they still going to be 24/7? So how does that kind of workflow and that work be managed out? But yeah, if it maintains that level of success and however you measure it in the third sector, because obviously a lot of these are frontline charities, aren't they? Dealing with very heavy and traumatic kind of things. So it's a consideration. But you see it in the news quite often, don't you? Other companies trialing it or rowing back on it.
Well, you see schools doing it now. I mean, the school that my kids go to, I know the teachers work a 4-day week in the classroom and then they get a day at home to do prep and whatever else it is that they want to do. It's not quite the same sort of thing, but it's rather than 5 days in the classroom. I think that's a good way for the school and it's seen results in terms of retention of its teachers. It's not losing as many teachers because it's offering them that day at home as well. So I think the world is changing, isn't it? I think ever since COVID, things have changed, and rightly so. So it doesn't need to be 9 to 5, 5 days a week anymore. So it'd be interesting to see what the future looks
it's
like.
One of those things, isn't it? It's one of those projects, those larger societal kind of shifts that does garner a lot of political footballing. A lot of headliners love them because it stirs up quite a lot of opinions, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Across the spectrum.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now for part 2 of our conversation with Zsuzi from CoppaFeel and Emma from the Saltways. In this half, we go behind the scenes of Sue's story, how the film came together, the tone they were aiming for, and what the wider campaign looked like beyond the video itself. Let's jump back in.
Zsuzi, talking about impact, I wanted to move on to just to talk about what the end result of this is. You've got an incredible film, and we'll put a link to it in our show notes as well, and we'll post it out on our socials during the week that this episode comes out as well, so people can see it. But you've got an amazing film there. What has the impact been, and how has that gone down, and the campaign that's wrapped around it? How's that been received by your supporters? But also, how is it received internally at CoppaFeel as well?
So the film is received with lots of teary eyes, but in the best way possible. So as I mentioned, the film has done absolute wonders for our legacy giving program. Since we launched it, we've seen a 300% increase in legacy pledges, which is just mind-blowing. Until we launched the film, we'd only ever asked our supporters to think about leaving a gift in their will once, and also mostly in kind of casual conversations with supporters who've been really warm to us for many, many years. And so having that film and giving our community something that makes the topic feel a lot less scary. When you can relate to someone in a film and recognize yourself in Sue and in her kind of thinking about what she wants her legacy to be, and including CoppaFeel as part of that, it really helps to normalize the conversation, which was one of our biggest goals when we set out to create this film, is to normalize conversations around end of life planning. We're really conscious of the fact that when we ask our community to leave a gift in their will, we're asking them to place a huge amount of trust in CoppaFeel. They're essentially asking us to create a version of the future that they would have wanted to see and experience had they still been alive. And so being able to reassure them that that impact that they want to see will actually happen is huge, and a film is a really helpful way to do that. But again, because that trust is so vital, we didn't want to think we can go from 0 to 100 immediately. And so this film was just a small part in a long process of first normalizing those conversations, then starting to get people to write their will. So we have a free will writing service that all of our supporters can access through a brilliant organization called Farewell. There's no obligation to leave a gift to CoppaFeel. Again, we think that the process of writing your will and thinking about your end-of-life wishes is so valuable that we want to bring that value to our community, whether they're in the financial position to leave a gift in their will to CoppaFeel or not. But despite that, we've seen really positive gift inclusion rates through that free will service, thanks to the film's ability to really, again, drive home that impact and really show our community what a powerful way it is to support CoppaFeel even beyond their lifetime.
The response that you've had with this legacy campaign, has that kind of changed the way you're looking at the rest of your fundraising throughout the charity? Has it given you an idea to do something a bit more differently or a bit more personal to your fundraising, to your campaigns?
So I always say that my absolute favorite part about my job is our community. I know every fundraiser says this, but I genuinely think we have the absolute best supporters in the entire sector. And so because of that, and because of the fact that from day one, CoppaFeel has always been about telling stories. That's how we always started. Chris telling her story, showing that young people can also be affected by breast cancer. It's kind of the backbones of who we are as a charity. So that kind of storytelling element and that real community feel has always been quite central to everything that we do. All of our kind of campaigns and fundraising kind of products, they're all built out of what our community has told us, what they're interested in, whether that's, like specific fundraising challenges or the brands that we partner. We, for example, want to be really, really intentional where when we consider what brands we want to partner, we ask, are they reaching 18 to 24-year-olds? That really real core community of people that we want to reach. So I guess the reason I was kind of struggling to answer your question initially is because it's always been the case. I think the way we approach legacy giving and that real kind of community and storyteller focus is just what we do at CoppaFeel. It's kind of our natural response to existing in the charity world. We don't receive any government funding or anything like that. So we're entirely reliant on our incredible community. And we always want to recognize that and celebrate that in everything we do.
Amazing. That sounds great. And Emma, just coming back to what Zsuzi was saying about the impact there, and when you hear figures like that in terms of a 300% increase in legacy pledges, I suppose from an agency perspective for you, that's mission accomplished, isn't it? That's job done. How does that make you feel when you hear about an impact like that?
It makes it all just worthwhile. And I think I don't think we expected it to do that well so quickly, because that was only really the soft launch, really, wasn't it, Zsuzi? So I think we kind of thought, oh, maybe they'll get something. But I think with legacy films especially, it's more of they're there to exist for a while, and they should be drip fed, and it's not so much as wow, we're here and this is legacies. It's more of a softer ass. So I don't think we were expecting it to do that well that quickly, but I think it just goes to show that approach of really listening to who your potential legacy donors are and then creating content around that messaging just works, because we always say with the content, there should be like nods. People should watch it and nod along to it and go like, oh, that's me. Yeah, I get that. I see. That's my values too. So I think that just really reflects in that. But yeah, and I think it's just great because being able to then, our intention with doing this with CoppaFeel was always to then be able to share this with the sector, so that it took away that like scariness around creating legacy content, and hopefully it means that more medium and small size charities especially will be able to kind of think, oh well, it's not that scary, and look, they got good results too, so maybe we can do it.
On that subject, what tips then would you offer to those charities looking at the impact that this film has had? What would because I completely agree with you. I'm sure it will inspire people to think, gosh, this is a really good approach, So what would your top tips be for those kind of charities to kind of embrace that?
I think my biggest thing is research. So don't just jump into it and think, oh, let's make a cool legacy fundraising film. First, think about, like, even if you've never had a legacy gift or a pledge before, look at what's worked before that you've created. So even if it's looking at your social media posts, like what is it that when you say certain things, it resonates with people? Or when you've done a fundraising appeal in the past, what was it that really clicked with people? And then my biggest piece of advice is think about your audience before you create the content, and create the content for them, not what you think works. So look at, and usually that is, we started using a phrase, didn't we, Zsuzi? It's not a millennial passion project. So we need to think of it as, if legacy fundraising, generally it is an older demographic. If you're wanting to, it sounds morbid, but get a payout in the next sort of 10, 15 years, you do need to be targeting an older demographic. So they're going to consume content in a totally different way to a millennial. So speak to them. Even if you have just volunteers of that age, speak to them, ask them, where do you consume your content? Have you seen any legacy films? What did you like? What didn't you like? What is it about our charity that makes us special, that someone would consider leaving a gift and a will? And then use all that as the framework and the basis for the messaging of your content. And you can create this stuff on your phone. Like we do free workshops for charities teaching how to create content on phones. You don't have to spend loads of money. You could have, a supporter speaking about why they might leave a gift in a will, or you could have a service delivery staff member talking about the work that they're able to do because of a gift in a will that was left and the impact that that's had. I think it's really making it specific to your organisation and the audience that you're trying to reach, and not just skipping ahead to let's make a film, like taking a step back and thinking, who are we making this for? And that can even influence where you're going to share it. So, boomers tend to consume content, longer form, landscape, Facebook. So make your content in that way rather than, portrait TikTok. It's just not gonna work. I'm not saying don't discount younger demographics, because there's definitely potential there. And there is recent research that's shown, Gen Z are more likely to give more in the future, but because of this big transfer of generational wealth soon, you can't discount anybody. But I'd say just always think about who is the audience for this, and how do they consume content, and what drives that audience to want to leave a gift in the will to your organisation.
So I guess it's just listening. It's listening to your community, isn't it? Even if what they're telling you is perhaps not something you've done as a charity before, or not the way you approach your charity work before. If that's what the audience, that's what your demographic, or that your community is saying to you, then be bold or be striking if that's what they're saying that they want you to be, I guess, Emma. Yeah,
and I think just be really clear that this is a legacy fundraising film, and be bold in that as well, because if it's a bit vague, it can be lost a bit and people just watch it, which is why one of the decisions that we wanted it just to be about Sue, because what we didn't want is for someone to watch it, like I said, and then all that sticks with them is Leanne's story, because it wasn't about, as much as it was about Leanne, it was about Sue's decision to leave a gift in a will, and that's what the focus should be.
And Zsuzi, just looking ahead, now the film's out there, have you thought ahead in terms of what's next for legacy marketing at the charity? Is this a start of a whole series, or what's coming next?
Definitely. I think something that we were really clear about from the very beginning is that we didn't just want to create this brilliant film and then completely kind of leave it there and lose all the kind of brilliant impact that it can have. So as Emma mentioned, this first stage is what we're calling it, was kind of just a soft launch of the film. So we shared the film with our warm audience, as Emma mentioned, on Facebook, on our newsletter, the places where we know are slightly older members of our community generally tend to be. And we also kind of tested 2 different approaches to sharing that initial message. We were very honest with ourselves with the fact that this is the first time that we're talking about legacy giving, but this is really the first time that we're directly targeting that sort of 50+ audience. So we wanted to make sure that we were listening to them and seeing what really worked for them. So we kind of tested 2 approaches, one that was more focused on impact and the impact that a legacy gift can have. And then the other one was more down that line of sort of deathmin of this is just a bit of admin that you can do while your kids are at swimming practice. Farewell makes it really easy to do that. And very clearly, the response was impact, 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 lead with impact. It's so, so important for this audience. So that's kind of what we went with for that soft launch. And that's what we want to do in phase 2, which will be coming later this year. So we want to do some paid promotion, probably on social media and paid search. I say probably because we're not quite at the stage yet where we've got any concrete plans, because, as I mentioned, with trust being so important with legacy giving, we want to make sure that we're not just going to this cold audience with our kind of marketing and not giving them anything in return. So we're currently in the process of creating a legacy pack for our audience. Again, as this is such a new income stream for us, it's not something that we've had before. So we want from the moment that someone comes across our legacy giving program to feel like they can put their trust in us. And we are going to show that to them by having lots of resources available for people to access when it comes to legacy giving, both from kind of practical tips, also case studies like Leanne, but also like Chris's funeral, just getting people to think about kind of alternative ways of thinking about end of life planning for the first time as well, and making it seem like something that, you know, everyone does, and we all do, but we don't like to think about it that way. We like to kind of forget that it exists and that it's something that we're going to have to think about at one point. So part of that legacy pack is going to be lots of resources to get people thinking about it in a way that doesn't feel too scary and overwhelming. And then, that's kind of our plans at the moment. The other thing that I think is really important to kind of consider if you're thinking about starting a project like this and producing a legacy giving film is to think about how you're going to look after the people who pledge to leave a gift in their will. So that's something that we're really going to be focusing on from now on until, you know, the rest of time, really, because although obviously we targeted a slightly older demographic, a lot of our audience are on the kind of sort of 30s, 40s, maybe even 20s age group. And so loads of the pledges that we've received, 3/4 of it, in fact, have come from people who are under 40. So we need to make sure that they stay engaged, that they're really interested in what we're doing, and that they continue to see their gift to CoppaFeel as an essential part of their legacy, you know, for the next 50, 60, 70, 80, as many years as possible. So that's going to be a really big focus for us, and to kind of build out a real kind of process for making sure that those supporters stay engaged, whether that's with specific volunteering opportunities, getting to visit our wonderful glittery CoppaFeel HQ, you know, anything that helps them feel like a really core part of our mission during their lifetime as well.
Emma and Zsuzi, thank you so much for joining us. It's been such an interesting conversation. And I must say, it's a great film. And I really think, just as we've been chatting, you guys should think about entering it into the Smiley Charity Film Awards. We've featured them on the show before. It's a brilliant annual competition celebrating the best of charity film. If you haven't thought about it already, I definitely recommend getting an entry in, because it's a brilliant film. So congratulations to both of you on a fantastic piece of collaboration and a great film and a great campaign that has achieved some great results. So fantastic. And thank you for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure to meet you both. And as I said, a fascinating conversation. So thank you both.
Thank you so much for having us.
Over the past few weeks, we've been shining a light on some of the UK's incredible small charities, organisations doing vital work, often with limited resources and very little recognition. There are thousands of these charities quietly changing lives every day, and we think more people should hear about them. So if you're part of one, or you know a team doing brilliant things in their community, we'd love to hear from you. Just drop us a line at thecharityshowpod@gmail.com or use the link in the show notes. Tell us who you are, who you support, and what would help. Whether that's visibility, connections, or a bit of backup, we'll do our best to share your story. So Piers, who are you going to shine a spotlight on this week?
And apologies if I get your name wrong, but it's from Lucia Farney, who got in touch to talk about the Maypole Project. It's a charity that's set up to support children with complex medical needs, and it helps them and their families. The Maypole Project, the website goes on to say, aims to relieve and help preserve the mental and physical well-being of children and young people who have complex medical needs and disabilities, and to support their family members as well as others who are affected by their suffering and, in certain cases, bereavement. And it goes on to say that every year, 12 to 17 of every 10,000 children are diagnosed with an illness and or a disability that threatens or shortens their lives, with 65% of these families needing to seek professional support. So the Maypole Project aims to educate, support and preserve the mental and physical well-being of carers and professionals working with such families and helps them with issues of loss and bereavement, as they goes on to say. And their final quote is that our vision is for all families who have a child with a complex medical illness to have access to a Maypole Project support worker at this time of great need. So a really powerful charity there with a really urgent need from their supporters, and something that, you know, it touches on some of the work that we do here as a charity as well. So when families go through a crisis like this, these sort of charities like the Maypole Project are there to help them as much as they can. So a much worthy charity, that.
Yeah, amazing. Absolutely, completely agree. And I've got another amazing small charity that's focused on changing the lives of children. This is Children's Alliance, and they're the charitable foundation of water babies. Now, you might have heard of water babies. And they tell us, or they got in touch to tell us, that we're working to create better starts, brighter futures for children in the UK. And the information they sent us, and that gives us a little bit of background. They tell us that countless children are facing issues making it difficult for them to live their lives to their fullest potential. Many are affected by challenges such as a lack of physical activity, mental health issues, or socioeconomic and cultural inequalities. As adults, we can make a difference, but most people don't realise how much a child's first 5 years will impact their physical and mental well-being for life. And Children's Alliance wants to change that. Bit of background then. Children's Alliance was born out of water babies. Now, that's obviously, you know, maybe you're familiar with water babies, Piers. I remember them, I think, from the days when the kids were learning to swim back many years ago. So, yeah, Children's Alliance was born out of water babies' passion in giving back to communities and supporting families. Children's Alliance provides an action plan of how to actively try and support everyone. Water Babies believes in investing in children in and out of the pool for a better future. As the world leader in baby swimming, they went on to tell us, Water Babies understands the importance of water education and how water confidence builds life confidence. Children's Alliance supports communities to give children and young people access to water and water activities, not just through swimming lessons, but also through provision of swimwear, transport to swimming lessons, inclusion into swimming lessons, and much more. At the same time, the Children's Alliance wants to broaden politicians' awareness to the health and wellbeing issues of many young people in the UK. This began the campaign for a department which represents children and young people, so children are included in policy-making processes right at the very beginning, the charity tells us. It really does, they say, take a village to raise a child, and it's everyone's responsibility to help make a difference in children's lives. If we address issues at the start of life, we will raise healthier, happier adults. So there you go, another brilliant children's charity, Piers. Two great small charities for small people this week.
Yeah, definitely two brilliant children's charities there. And don't forget, if there's a small charity you think we should feature, do drop us a line at thecharityshowpod@gmail.com or head to the link in the show notes to nominate them. And that's a wrap for episode 29. A huge thanks to Zsuzi and Emma for helping us to think differently about how to approach legacy marketing. What's coming up, Tim?
Well, we're going to be back next Monday with another episode of the Charity Show Bites, so keep an ear out for that one. And of course, if you fancy being a guest on a future episode of our main show, we'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely, and we say this every fortnight, but this sector is full of brilliant stories. So whatever you or your charity are working on, send us an email, a voice note, or a DM using the links in the show notes. Let us know what you think we should be talking about.
And as we've said already in the show, if there's a small UK charity you think deserves a bit of love, don't keep it to yourself. Nominate them for our small charity spotlights. It could be your own or one you quietly admire. Just head to the show notes and tell us more.
If you enjoyed this episode, tap follow or subscribe on your podcast app. And if you've got a sec, a quick 5-star review really helps others discover the show.
So that's it for episode 29. Thanks for listening, for supporting, and for being part of it all. Take care, and we'll see you next time.